Hello, I like to fix video recorders, and today we're going to have another go at fixing a problem I've had with a Panasonic Super VHS AG-4700, similar to the NV-HS1000 model. I'll show you the fault and let's see if we can finally bottom this out. Here's the machine, and it does work, but when I first power it up, something weird happens. Let me power it up now and listen. So that's a head drum motor spinning very fast. There's a display, and it comes up with E9. I don't know if you can quite see that. After a while, it settles down. The display starts flashing zeros like it should, and it's ready to go. Sometimes when I switch the power on here from standby, it will make the same noise again for a short while, like that. Then it's fine. And everything's working fine. So what's wrong? I'll take the lid off and I'll show you what I've already done. The most likely culprit for this, I'd say, is a capacitor somewhere. And I initially blamed a power supply, so I swapped the power supply with one from a scrap machine, and it remained the same. I then thought, well, it's going to be the main board then. So I replaced the entire main board with one from a scrap machine, and the fault remains. So it's starting to point to the drum motor, which I can replace from the one with the scrap machine. But the E9 error implies it's a communication fail with the front panel. I think that's less likely, but it's also easier to change, at least reasonably easy to change. So I think that's where I'm going to start. So I will take the front off here and we'll swap it over with one from my scrap machine here. Okay, there comes the plastic front panel. This has connectors through to all the buttons, but the machine will run in this state. So we're looking at changing the entire front panel assembly here. Quite a lot of connectors. This is the board with a microprocessor on it, and this is the one I really need to change. I'll need to decide whether I'm going to change everything or just that part, whichever's easiest. Okay, that's the entire front panel removed. Let's fit the one from the scrap machine. Interesting. These are not quite the same, or something's missing. The connectors that join the two boards together seem to be missing from here. How can that be? Let's take it off and see if I can fathom out if that's a fault or there's a different way of connecting them. Now, has somebody raided bits off this machine already? Well, I've raided some bits off it, but not the front panel. This one also has a screw fitted that the other one doesn't have. Actually, several screws. So swapping this over has just become a lot harder because I'd have to refit the connectors from there. I do wish I'd checked this before I started working on the other machine. And this is not the board we need to change, is this one, because there's a processor back there. That one there, I think. So, I need to make a decision. Do I refit the original panel? Do I swap over the connectors? Do I look for another scrap front panel from somewhere else? Going back to this board here, this is the one that came off here, I think we will check these capacitors, because it does look like a capacitor problem. Now, some of these are concerned with driving the VFD and are nothing to do with the rest of the machine, but it would be worth checking through these capacitors because it's such a capacitor type fault. Okay, having checked out some of the capacitors, there's nothing more than the odd microfarad out, so I'm not blaming them. I'm going to refit this and assume that our problem is, as I believed it was all along, in the lower drum motor. So let's do that. Right, a quick check that the machine still seems to function the same way. E9. But that, you see, could just be a timeout. It's expecting the other boards to all come back by now. Look at this. That's flashing. That's very weird, isn't it? It's flashing the Super VHS light. And now it's working. Okay, I'll refit this board, then we're going to have to take the deck out and work on the lower drum. I think what we'll do this time is get the drum out of the scrap machine first, so we're ready to roll with it and don't have any more nasty surprises. Okay, there's the whole drum assembly. The upper head drum on this is fairly certain is knackered, so we'll have to swap them over. There are an assortment of capacitors on here, so it is possible that one of those is at fault, but they're rather hard to get to. Initially, for testing, I'm just going to fit this whole assembly complete with the knackered upper heads, because if it doesn't work, or it doesn't improve things, then I'm just going to swap the entire assembly over again. I'm just trying to remind myself whether you can gain access to the lower drum without taking the deck out. I think you may be able to do it just by taking the bottom board off. Not certain, so I'll have a look. Yes, it's one of the very few parts of the K mechanism that you can actually fully get to, because there's all this plastic work in the way of most of it. But the head drum, yes, we can get to that, so that's handy. That'll save a lot of time. Okay, remove the earthing contact at the top here. Need to be quite careful doing this because you could clobber the video head tips with your screwdriver. Now, I'm going to be very careful here because these are known good heads. Okay, I can drop this in. So electrically it's now in one piece, mechanically less so. The drum is just sat there. The head amplifier is in place and connected up, the deck's all reconnected, which I didn't need to disconnect in the first place. So let's just see now if it boots properly. Here goes. Exactly the same. Do you know, I really wasn't expecting that. E9 it says. Wait a moment and see if it does the same thing. Okay. So let's refit the original head drum. Do you know, I haven't tried the other head amplifier module. I'm sure that's got no bearing on it, but it would be simple enough to try. So we now have the original upper and lower head drum assembly. Everything's original except the head amplifier. I'm sure that won't make a difference, but let's just prove it. And if it doesn't, then I'll refit the original one from this machine and reassemble all the deck. Off it goes again. Wasn't that. Didn't think it would be. If I refit the screws to the head amplifier, which is connected to this, it'll hold it in place so that I can then flip the system upside down and do the drum motor screws up underneath without risk of everything falling out. I'll also put in the earthing brush. Right, so even though the drum's not screwed in yet, nothing's going to fall out. Just a quick check to see that nothing bad has happened. And the machine is still working fine. So it's not suffered any damage as a result of that work, but we still have this question over where this fault is. And I suppose we are really looking at this board, aren't we? So I'm going to have to go and see if I've got another machine that can offer up a board. I believe it would be the same board in the NV-HS1000, and I may have a scrap one of those. Failing which, I may have to swap the connectors over. It's a lot of work when we're only sort of fault finding at this point. We don't even know that the fault is in this board. But okay, let's see if I've got another scrap machine somewhere. Alas, I don't have a scrap machine that's going to help me other than this one. So I'm going to have to swap those connectors over from here to this one and try this. It's a bit of a nuisance. Okay, I have the connectors off that board. Let's fit them on the one from the scrap machine. I can now fit that to our machine, but you know, I'm not at all sure this is going to work. I know it's on its side, but we'll know pretty quickly whether I've fixed it or not. I really rather doubt it, but let's give it a whirl. Switch it on. Haha. Fault's still there. Let's just confirm this starts up okay. You see in the fault condition, the S-VHS light is on. The display is not working on this front panel. Oh no! Oh dear. So not only did it not help, but I'm going to have to refit those connectors back onto the board that they came from because we have a display fault on this scrap panel. So I'm going to have to refit the connectors back on here. Oh dear, oh dear. Okay, back together with its original panel. Let's see what happens.
That sounds like an air raid siren.
Right, so the display is working, but we're getting our E9 error. And we already know it will recover from that in a few seconds. Okay, so we're back in the position of having this machine working. Let's use the dirty heads. Apart from this problem with starting up. So what's going on? We've changed almost everything I could possibly think of that might have a bearing on this fault. Do you think we're in a position of leave well alone? Because basically the machine works. But I'd really like to fix that fault. So what's going on here? I've replaced the main board, the power supply, the drum, the front panel. I suppose what I haven't changed is the cabling. If we had something like a weird earthing fault, perhaps that could cause the problem. Or I've missed it, it's completely something else that I've not changed and not thought about. Or one of the components I've changed has got the same fault, very unlikely. Or I'm completely stupid. So what do you think the problem is?
I think you're being a bit stupid, Daddy.
Oh, thank you, Max. Well, let me know in the comments below what you think's going on here. I'll do plenty more content on audio and video technology and hopefully have a little bit more luck than with this one. Bye for now.